Inglesby. I'm from a company called .1, and I'm talking about sort of my journey from textile design to .1, which is a sort of biotech genetics-based business. I'm giving a talk because I've just had quite a varied sort of few years from university, and I think it's kind of quite an interesting journey where I started off doing something completely different to where I am now, and I imagine in the future that will change again. So it's kind of talking about how it's fine to kind of pivot in your sort of educational career and after that as well, and that it's not like a failure to kind of do lots of different things. I think social events, kind of meeting people in this environment is massively important. I know that from the contacts I've made through events like this has helped me massively in my own business, and although I started this thing on my own, I never really felt like I was alone in it. It's all about who you know and who you meet and those good relationships you can have. Hey guys, I'm Iona. I graduated from my BA about 6 years ago now, which is horrible, but I went to Chelsea, and I'm basically just going to tell you kind of sort of my journey from my BA to where I am now, because it's kind of gone down quite an unconventional path, and that's fine, I've decided. So I started up a company last year called .1, which creates DNA personalised design, and I'm going to show you the brand film to start with, and then I'll take you back to kind of where it began.
This is Peter. Peter shares 50% of his DNA with this banana and 94% of his DNA with this dog. In fact, 99.9% of Peter's DNA is exactly the same as yours and every other human on Earth. So, let's discover your .1%. From a simple cheek swab, your DNA is extracted and analysed. Using DNA profiling, you can be identified from the other 8 billion people on Earth. .1 has created an algorithm which converts your genetic data into colour, generating a print personalised to your DNA. Your DNA design is 100% unique to you and also shows your relationship to others. These brothers share 78% of their DNA profile data, and these identical twins share 100% of theirs. And for families, we have created a DNA family tree, which maps gene inheritance from one generation to the next. Decode your DNA with .1. .1. Your DNA, your design.
Sort of merging with science and design is something that I've always been really interested in, but I just hadn't really realised. So there's a couple of pictures here. This is me when I was sort of 7 years old. We grew up without a television, which is unusual these days. And my parents were both medical, and my dad had a real skeleton from his medical school days. And apparently, this is actually in my bedroom closet. I used to spend hours rebuilding the skeleton and studying his anatomy books, and just from a very early age, just really obsessed with the human body and finding out how things worked. And the other half of my time, when I wasn't playing with skeletons, was making things. So I was always kind of drawing and painting and doing other things. And sort of fast forward sort of 20 years to where I am now, at 27, I still love science and do quite lots of science workshops, and I'm still making. And I think when you're younger, these fields, people think you're either like a science person or sort of an arts person. And it never really occurred to me that you could be both, and that was kind of fine. So I thought I'd go and do zoology, and I applied for that at uni. But during sixth form, I had an amazing art teacher, and he kind of told me about this place where his brother went, which was Chelsea. I'm from the northeast, so I hadn't been to London before as a young adult. And so I decided to go to Chelsea, and I studied textile design. And I was thinking, this is definitely the thing I want to do. This is so right for me. It's going to be great. But then I ended up doing some projects like this. I'm the second on the left. This was probably one of the worst days of my life. And it was just kind of when you start doing something and you just think, this is so not for me. And I was just trying so hard to kind of fit in with this course and kind of get into fashion. And the whole time I was just I'm literally not excelling at this because this is not right for me. But it's really hard to kind of, you think it's like a failure if you don't quite fit. And I had an opportunity to do Erasmus, so I went to Sweden halfway through the course and loved it. and kind of fell in love with Scandinavian design and sort of woodwork and the nature of everything. And I got back in my sort of halfway through my second year of Chelsea and just thought, like, I'm going to stay on the course because I need to finish it, but I'm just not going to do textiles. So on my textiles degree, I actually graduated with a project which was this, which was kind of sound responsive lighting design, kind of based on sort of Scandinavian nature. My tutors at Chelsea kind of left me to it and they literally said, like, we can't help you with this project, we don't know if you're going to get a first or a third, and I got a 2-1, so I proved them wrong either way, which was great. So I basically graduated from Chelsea with no textile skills, no real other skills, and £27,000 worth of debt. And I felt so lost, because in London especially, and I just felt like I'd really messed up massively, and I'd come out of uni and was kind of in a really bad place, and I wanted to run away, and so I did quite spectacularly, and I moved here. So I spent, after 4 years in London, I spent the next 6 months in the Finnish Arctic, as far removed as possible from my London life, and just try and really work out what I wanted to do. And it was definitely the best thing I ever did. And it seems like a massive sort of sidestep, but it kind of makes loads of sense to me. So this became my life for 6 months. And because I had an A-level in biology, I was the second most qualified person for medical stuff there. So I spent a lot of time doing veterinary care, helped with the operations and did kind of minor things myself. The textiles also came in useful, so Osmond, who's on the sort of dog wearing the pants at the back, he had frostbite on his balls, which is a really common thing in the Arctic for huskies, and I was put in charge of solving that problem, so at least my degree didn't go to waste, and they didn't really work and he hated them. Some other skills, which is quite useful for living in Hackney, and this is just like, basically this was my life, looking after 150 Alaskan huskies, 200 kilometres north of the Arctic Circle, and it was just fantastic. But I kind of had to come back down to earth. And in that time I had applied kind of remotely to the Royal College to do product design, because while I was there I did a load of building, and I really like making things, I love woodwork. I kind of like the idea of sort of product design, so I applied to go to the Royal College, and I got in, which was a bit of a shock. So I came back to London. And while I was there, I started to think about what I was really interested in. I was like, I love science, I've always been really interested in data and coding, but I have a sort of background in textile design. And I was quite lucky that we were randomly doing a project with a textile company in Scotland. And I started to think about these kind of 3 areas of my interests. And to notice that kind of there was actually a connection between everything, and it was to do with sort of information and coding. And these kind of 4 things are really similar in some sort of binary sense. So the first one is to do with like how weaving machines are programmed. The second is an old teleprinter, which is an old sort of coding device. Third is computers, and fourth is us. And actually, everything is binary, even DNA. And I started to understand that scientists and Microsoft at the moment has their own department of trying to use genetic sort of DNA as a storage device for binary data, and you could store the entire world's kind of computer data in a teaspoon of DNA. That's how like efficient it is. So there's kind of a cross between all these things. And at the same sort of time I was thinking about identity, and it's obviously something we're all kind of to do with everybody. And I was working with a Scottish weaving company, and they had this collection of tartan fabrics, and I started to think about how textiles, going back to that, really is how we identify ourselves. So this is kind of Scottish textiles. In Japan, the samurai used to wrap their swords in ribbons, which were sort of related to each family, and even in like modern culture, so football fans, kind of subcultures, they have kind of uniforms in a way to identify themselves. And I started thinking how I could kind of pull this together, and so I presented the idea to the sort of MD of this company, saying like, why don't we start doing sort of personalised textiles to do with identity, but using sort of science data? And this was his response. And he literally hated it. But I was so determined that this was a good idea that it didn't deter me, and I carried on anyway. So I DNA tested my whole family. We've kind of got a big interest in sort of family trees anyway. It was a test for identity testing, so I kind of use it in forensics. And I was thinking that this is the sort of thing which makes you you. So with the sort of forensic data, which is on the left, I was thinking about, I see things as sort of colour and design, so I created a way to convert that into just like a colour representation and then had it woven. So I created my own like family sort of DNA textile. And started to notice that there was this place for kind of science and design and technology to all come together, and that in kind of the greater scheme of things, that design is such a fantastic communication tool that maybe you can reach people through it to help the sort of science world. So I was working for a genetics company for a while after graduating and understood that there needs to be better sort of public engagement in science to help with research, and that this is kind of like a cyclical thing, and that maybe I could set up a company using my sort of grad project which kind of embodied this. So I graduated from the RCA with that sort of project, and was part-time working for a genetics company, and then in my own time set up .1. And as a designer, you actually have like amazing skills to set up your own business, even though kind of some of the sort of accounting stuff is not there, or the business sort of nous in some ways, but you can like probably use quite a lot of technology. You can build your own website, you can design things. So I created some software to do sort of the genetic conversion. I built my own website, designed like a sort of a consumer DNA kit, kind of forged partnerships with a lab in Newcastle, manufacturers, and launched a business literally pretty much a day ago, this day a year ago. And it went quite well to start with. So I was just really lucky that it kind of was kind of at a really good time when genetics was kind of slightly at the forefront of the press and for other reasons. And what was really great was that the same story would get into sort of fashion magazines and science journals, and it'd be the same story, and it was like really combining these worlds which used to be very separate. But there's also like a lot of haters. I have a file of haters as well, and it just really highlighted the fact that people get really scared about genetics, and that there is sort of this kind of important way of engaging the public and understanding that it's really important to understand about yourself, and it's not this kind of scary thing where I'm going to clone you, and I don't know, these things are like completely scientifically impossible. So the business has gone well. We profiled about 300 people, and this kind of really opened up the doors to what I've kind of transitioned into now, which is more to do with kind of healthcare and that side of things from genetics. So without really any genetics knowledge at the beginning, after the last 2 years, really sort of self-teaching and meeting with people and companies, I've started to understand that it's such an amazing field and you can find out so many things about yourself. This is my sort of ancestry report and some things about myself. And it's because the cost of the sort of technology has gone down so much. So this is like a whole new field which is now accessible to people like me, like designers. And I guess my sort of pivot at the moment, is into healthcare and using design as a tool to kind of make some waves in that. So especially things to do with like getting people to understand about their genetics so they can prevent things from even happening. And also about precision medicine. So understanding about genetics so that you could go to a doctor's and have sort of tailored medicine to you as well. So this is quite a scary image, I thought, and it's the top 10 grossing drugs in America, and actually how much they work on people. And some of them are just for quite sort of small things like heartburn, but some of them are for schizophrenia drug only works in 1 on 5 people because they're not genetically going to respond to it, and that seems like insane. And that's like a really important thing. And if people are scared to do DNA tests, they're never going to find this out. So to have a design company which kind of introduces people to genetics in a fun way and kind of breaks down these kind of fear barriers, I think is really important. So that's kind of my final pivot into sort of the healthcare industry. But kind of back to the point of the talk was that when I was at the Royal College, Ron Arrow was the head a few years before me. And I heard that he had said a quote which I can't quite remember, but it was something about he wanted to produce a generation of unhireable graduates. And by that point I was like over £30,000 in debt, and I was thinking like, that is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. Like, I want to be hireable, like I can't, like that would be terrible. And now I totally get it, and it was kind of like the book which was mentioned, and it's like I never ever fitted into any of the niches. From the whole time, every single thing I was doing, I was thinking like, this isn't quite right, and I'm not doing very well at this because I'm really trying to do fashion, I'm trying to do this thing or this thing. And actually what he meant by this, and what is the whole point, is that you shouldn't try and fit into something when you can forge your own way and like make your own career. And what I'm doing now didn't really exist before, and there's no other company doing quite what I'm doing, so it's kind of this idea of like, now I'm doing like my thing, and it's for the first time ever I'm actually doing like good at something. But it hasn't all been on my own. So this is kind of for people who are maybe graduating soon or maybe thinking want to set up their own businesses and things. And I was really lucky. This kind of only helps the girls in the room, but there's quite a lot of initiatives for girls in sort of tech and digital roles at the moment. And these are kind of 3 mentoring programs, which were like so fantastic for me. So if anyone's thinking about starting their own business and just want to be around other like female entrepreneurs, or just have like an idea to do something on your own, then I would really recommend, especially Developer and the sort of local Go alt program. And it's just kind of like free advice and creates this network around you, which is so important. And yeah, they're my details if you have any questions. But yeah, thanks a lot.